this is going to be a little bit. As I'm going along with these episodes of my book, I just wanted to make it clear that I do go through and edit, and some things do get changed, but it is still my words, my story, my voice. Um, I just wanted to put that out there and make it clear that, it is getting edited as we go. Some parts will change, there will be more to it. A lot of this that you're hearing is mostly my brainstorming um, up to this point, and I'm putting it together. Well, you'll see it as it goes, I guess. But yes, it will change from time to time, especially as we get deeper into my story. This is my story, A Child That Matters. Thomasina Wallace. Introduction. I am the first generations that has not, I'll start that over. I am of the first generations that has been created from the hells of residential school, and I can see so much of the pain, sorrow, frustrations, and anger, or anything that has had nothing but a negative impact on the lives of the First Nations people. I can relate to the times of the residential schools. Our way of life before that was family and environment. Knowing where we all stood within the family structures, community structures, cultural protocol structures, we had the utmost respect for, and we belonged to the natural environment. Giving thanks to all that Mother Nature had provided, our clothing, our diet, our medicine, our classroom, and our universities. It was our way of life. We came from a strong connection physically, culturally, spiritually, and respectfully as a people, taking only what was needed. During the ban of the potlatches, our children were ripped from their homes, their families, and their communities. We all know the devastating, horrific nightmares of what had happened to our children in those days. But the effects are still causing today's First Nations people to suffer in so many levels, not knowing how to do the simple things in life that most of us take for granted. Life's simplest things become barriers of not knowing where we fit, not knowing how to ask for help, and sadly, not knowing has led some of our people farther away from their true identity of being First Nations. They went corporate so far they don't even know where they stand within their own culture or family. This, of course, being both volunteer or circumstantial to entities like the ministry. But within the culture of the First Nations people, this would have never been an issue. We would never leave our families with the last resort of being homeless, or to suffer enough in sorrow to get stuck in addiction. All these luxuries of this colonized world of consuming has weakened us, and we started to seek validation of where we stand with no clear understanding of how to stand in our own mind and thoughts. Being so lost, we don't even know it's okay to say, "Can you help me?" or "I don't understand." Being in this dark place of confusion and sorrow, not knowing whether or not you matter. There is a point in your mind where you get to and understand that enough is enough. You start to tell yourself you don't want this misery of being stuck in that dark place anymore. The message that I'm putting forward in this book is I am right here living proof that is possible. We all have it in us to become more than we are, better than we are, more capable than we are. We can make the comeback greater than the setback. I can go on and on about how I trained to do the impossible with the belief in myself and how it literally changed my life until I'm blue in the face, and I will. But when I sat back and really thought about what the main reason was I started drinking in the first place, now this is where I faced my oldest demon, the oldest demon that I had within my subconscious mind. It is the person we all see today. Some of you call me Tom, Tommy, or Thomas, along with other variations, of course, living on the res. And some call me Thomasina. Thomasina has been who I hid from the public eye until my 49th birthday. By doing this in my early years, I had to magnify my masculinity, as in those days of my puberty, bi, trans, and same sex relations, and long before pronouns were even a thing, male and females were only seen as that. Same gender relationships were never seen, heard of, or even accepted. So I developed this urge to be that guy. I had to be that guy that could, as you will hear throughout my story. Having said that, with my curiosities, I only kept it from the public eye, meaning I was not even true to myself. I am the youngest of 7 siblings, and it was not a conversation that anyone really had within the family. I did not know what was happening to my body or why my thoughts were the way they were. I did not know the changes were natural and everyone would be going through them. Not only did I do all that I could to keep the hair off, my thoughts brought so many curiosity of both male and female anatomy. This, of course, bringing me to explore my own body in private and made me more curious about others. There were others with similar interests, and yes, some of those curiosities came to life. We tried a variety of sexual acts together. At first, mutual masturbation and looking at porn. We all know this is a common occurrence among males hitting puberty, whether we admit it or not. But this led to other acts of bringing up curiosities, and touching started. It led to more, and I won't lie, there was a few of us that were curious, but when explored, they decided they didn't want it anymore. Some of us, though, did take the time and found places to indulge in our curiosities together. As time progressed, we all went our own separate ways, and the sexuality of that time became non existent, or dormant at the very least. Not to say that the sex is the only part of me that was different and hidden. I also enjoyed the feel of women's clothing, mainly underclothes, panties, thongs, and lingerie under my guy clothes. I tell you this because even though I hid who I was from the public eye, I was still who I was when I reached that coming of age part of my life. Over the years of hiding who I truly am, I did not allow myself to learn more about it. Now that I am comfortable enough to be open about how I like to dress and admit to myself what my sexuality is, I feel such a weight lifted off of my shoulders. Not allowing the opinions, words, or actions of others to decide, alter, blind my perception or the direction of my life that I choose to live. This is where I found the confidence to be uniquely, genuinely, truthfully, and openly me. When I realized that who I am is someone with a unique shine, it is my shine and it is who I am. When you reach that point of being true to you, life opens up so many doors and it becomes something better. Your confidence starts to build the empire within, and life literally becomes a magical place. But this small portion of my life has been the start of the person I am today. Many of the talents and capabilities that came naturally, not limited to my physical presence, but my words, energy, thought process, influence, and leadership skills as well. Many loved ones, family, and friends that have become family taught me life lessons in ways I'm sure they have no idea. In fact, some of the ones mentioned in my story that I've reached out to were surprised that I even remember certain moments in our time together from as far back as grade 1. My memory is quite vivid of most of my life, but my story is about many of the impacts that has formed me to be fucking unstoppable with a mindset of manifestation, positivity, and creativity. These are all the life lessons I have taken into my soul. As you can hear, my son's here. Um, this is all real. This is all real. This is me at home. My son's in the same room. My dad's in his room watching TV. But this is the beginning of my book. The morning of 4:15, July 13th, 2022. As I opened my eyes, I was instantaneously charged and ready to get her done. It was the day that I would complete the first annual sobriety walk for cancer. Walking from Port Hardy, 500 kilometers to Victoria, one end of Vancouver Island to the other. I woke feeling grateful for my friend Sam. We went to high school together and developed a bond of friendship that I was never had the opportunity of ever having before. She was keeping in touch with me and following the Sobriety Walk for Cancer from Port Hardy on Facebook. She had reached out to her family and had stayed in the surrounding communities of Brentwood to welcome me off the ferry. I had no idea what it was to happen before this, as I was only focused on getting there. Up to this point in the journey, every morning that all I had to do was get up, get my shit together, and go. But on this particular morning, as I smiled, hesitating, laying down my back, putting my right hand under my head on the pillow and crossed my legs, grinning from ear to ear, facing the ceiling with such a feeling of accomplishment. Remembering the conversation that I had with George the day prior after landing in Brentwood Bay, September 12th, off the ferry from Mill Bay. We did a meet and greet with a song, dance, and some words were exchanged. It was just after that welcoming was done, George had asked me, "What time are you planning on getting to mile marker 0 tomorrow?" I replied excitedly as I smiled, putting my bags back down. "Oh, hey, I didn't even realize there was a Terry Fox statue there. How far is it from here?" And quite honestly, about an hour prior, it was one of the crew members on the ferry that had asked me if I was going to the Terry Fox statue. But we'll get to that part later. I asked loud enough for everyone to hear, as I knew that the ones that were there were listening to every word that was being said, and they were locals of Brentwood and the Greater Victoria area, so I had anticipated someone would either already know, or with these computer phones, it could be figured out quite accurately. Within the group that was there, the distance was determined, and I had guesstimated I could make it there by noon if I left Brentwood Bay by 6 a.m., to which George politely says, "Can you maybe leave here at noon? Some of us want to be there have to work." He had this smug welcome smile that told me I was not getting there at noon. Oh, I didn't think of that. By the end of this conversation, though, it was determined that I would be leaving Brentwood Bay and heading to Victoria and arriving at mile marker 0 in the Terry Fox statue by 6 p.m. to allow those that wanted to be there at the final moments the time needed to attend after working hours. As I was laying there thinking about the night before I launched from Port Hardy and what it took for me to get this far, the years of growing up in an environment of the creation of the new beginning for our First Nations people. This racist, changing, dominant world of killing the Indian, our generation comes from survivors of genocide. Not only the explosion of technology in a worldwide scale, but going from the very first computers that were introduced in the education system in Cole Harbour School Elementary, hearing about previous predictions that no one would ever have a computer in their homes, as the circuitry and grand appearance of a computer in those days, we just could not comprehend. Now we carry them in our pockets, along with a phone, music player, alarm clock, camera, and GPS. Who knows what the full extent of what these phones are capable of? Lying there in Sam's house and thinking of the strengths that we have developed for me to make it possible, Mom comes to mind, as about 99% of the walk I wore this hat that was given to me. Now and then, when I was feeling defeated in the heat coming down and reflecting off of that shadowless highway, or exhausted to the point of staggering, talking to myself, or even after a good cry, I would take a deep breath, adjust my hat, and get my ass in gear. You see, back in December of 2019, my friend Paul had seen a live feed that I had done and has been following my positive posts on Facebook and really appreciated the bond that I have with my dad and my son. With the trend of Facebook, I had this focus of being positive in everything I did. With my little man Asa, who was 3 at the time, we went live and we made some pies together, which Asa called all the shots. We were sending out a positive vibe in early December that year, which for me personally is one of the toughest months of the year. Because on December 21st, 1992, Mom had passed. This was Mom and Dad's anniversary. She has passed from a series of distressful strokes that had her paralyzed to her last breath. Before December 21st, 1992, the family decided to try and celebrate Mom and Dad's anniversary. All of us siblings were gathered in Mom's room, doing the best we could to be festive, considering we were in the hospital. We all carried about our conversation and socialized in a room filled with hope, trying to shine through the animosity of the fear of losing Mom. I sat down beside Mom and stretched out her fingers, the way that I usually did, and made sure she was able to see me, as she had lost her speech. I trust it was the staff at the hospital that helped us develop the way of communicating with Mom, asking her yes and no questions, blinking once for yes and twice for no. Holding my tears and burying my emotions, trying to be strong for Mom in that moment, I asked her, "Feel good to stretching your fingers, Mom?" She blinked once, replying yes, but in that moment of her reply, I saw something different in her eyes as she blinked. She looked at me in a way that I cannot even put into words, as all I can say was, "I love you, Mom." And she blinked once. As I gazed in anguish into her eyes, not wanting to accept the inevitable, I was massaging her hand, then she slowly closed her eyes and let out her last breath. I was in shock. I didn't know what to do. Most of us that were in the room, but were distracted in conversation. I looked up and asked, "Where's Dad?" Making sure everyone heard, the room silenced for a few brief moments. They knew why I had asked the question so abruptly, hearing the extreme concern that Dad was not there. Loud bursts of sorrow and unstable voices echoed so uneasily throughout the halls of the hospital. Tears of pain rolling down the cheeks of everyone but me. To this day, I'm not even sure if someone told me or if I just got up and went looking for Dad. Pushing through the crowded room and crying family members, some trying to stop me, probably thinking I was about to lose it. I just needed to find Dad. Walking as abruptly as I could, I couldn't, as I could. The hallways grew longer as I walked in search of Dad. It was the longest walk I have ever done. The thoughts and emotions and tears all being contained by the lump in my throat. Dad needed to be with Mom. That was all that was on my mind. I looked around the corner at the end of the hall down by the emergency room towards the main lobby. I saw Dad on the payphone doing what Dad does. He was keeping family posted. "Dad!" My voice crackled through the lump in my throat. He looked up at me and saw this, what I can only describe as a blank look, and he just knew. I can remember him dropping the receiver, leaving it dangling vicariously with someone on the other end who had no idea what had happened. He rushed past me, and I started to follow him back to Mom's hospital room. slowing my pace, trying to start to comprehend what had just transpired as I was approaching the door to the hospital room. I can remember not being able to hear anything, just seeing family members hugging each other, attempting to bring comfort. But as soon as I made my way through that doorway, I saw Dad, who was perched at the side of Mom's now lifeless body. He embraced her, and as soon as my eyes found Dad with Mom and hearing his pain and his cry, it was Dad's cry that brought everything to the reality in my mind and emotions. I could not hold it any longer. I cannot I cannot seem to remember much after this until the day of her funeral, at least. Due to the timing and awareness of what time of the year, Mom's funeral date was set about an hour after her passing. As it was the 4 days before Christmas, Mom's funeral was on Christmas Eve, December 24th, 1992, which was 6 months after my graduation from grade 12. You see, receiving that hat in December being positive, I am not sure if Paul knows, but when this hat came to me for being positive nearing the anniversary of my mom's passing, that took more strength than I could ever attempted in the years before this. Wearing this hat on the walk gave me that strength to accomplish anything. And no, it was not easy, but it was positively the right thing to do. Mom was the last of her siblings as well, not knowing anything about what it must have been like for her in her alone time. But I can recall hearing her crying from time to time when I would be up late grabbing a snack or going to the washroom. Included in her grief, she was also old school. 2 of her sisters had passed after having children. Her sister Mary, mother to Lorraine, Charlie, and Bill, and her sister Mabel, who was mother to Fran. Mom's sisters, Mary and Mabel, had passed, and their children became a part of our home, brothers and sisters. The family structure, from a parent's perspective in the days that I was growing up, coming out of the residential schools and thrown into a society that was not very welcoming to First Nations people, or any other race for that matter. Best I can explain it, seeing what Mom and Dad created from those dark times, they created a family and made our house a home. And quite literally, Dad built that house from the ground up. Dad was hired to build that house originally for Uncle Stan, Dad's brother, who had supposed to have been moving there. But when the house was still being built, he had changed his plans and decided to stay in Vancouver. Dad had originally agreed to build his house pro bono, but the chief at the time, Grandpa Stevie Clare, Mom's uncle, gave the option for Dad to take the house as payment, which of course Mom and Dad agreed. Mom and Dad had Mom and Dad had guided so many of us children through this transition of this new becoming for our nation. From having to learn things right down to street addresses, phones and television, transportation and vehicles, paying rent, paying for food, electricity, and everything of our existence was new for all of us. I can remember when I first moved in that house. Dad was out of town. Before he left, though, we did stay in that rat-infested, incomplete house that was next door to the newer, unfinished home while he was gone. The newer home, or when he got home, he thought that Mom had left. I forgot to put that part in there, but yeah. The newer home had no running water, no electricity, and an old sheet for the door to each room, including the washroom. We literally had to shit in a bucket, or if we needed to pee, we would just go outside. There was no distractions from the outside world, just a simple life, thriving together to ensure our home was functional. Taking turns to take the full buckets of shit out and carrying full buckets of water in for cooking, laundry, and cleaning. No, not the same bucket. But life was simple, and it was home. Was it perfect? Hell no. But we were taken care of, and we were safe as they can possibly keep us. Even further, the very community was new. I can remember a time there was only 7 houses in Quetzino. No need for speed bumps, the roads weren't even paved. No need for codes on homes or even codes for building them. I can remember helping Dad, a self taught carpenter, that was called on to do most of the carpentry in Quetzino in his early developmental stages. I could I would be climbing the ladder to get up to Dad, who was on the roof section of the house, walking on top of the walls before the trusses were installed. No safety harness, no steel-toed boots, with no hard hat, not even a high-vis shirt. Just a 12-year-old boy at work with his dad, asking where he needs some nails tacked down. Not all our homes even had foundations. Therefore, many homes that were incomplete, but they were homes to all of us growing up. Bro Jeremy, aka Tuck. He got the nickname from Uncle Raymond, Mom's cousin on the Clare side. There was a Robin Hood movie that came out of the character, Friar Tuck. He had a different haircut and looked like a bad attempt of a mushroom cut. He was also a bit heavyset, as was Bro Tuck. It suited the character for the movie, but Bro Tuck, he had a thing for experimenting with his hair, getting all kinds of different haircuts, especially for tournaments. And like volleyball, floor hockey, soccer, you name it. He not only played, but he coached everyone he played with and brought out so many to be more capable in every sport that he played. Tuck loved sports and was a huge fan of hockey back in the days of the great one, Wayne Gretzky, number 99. He was on his rise to fame in the NHL in the 80s. Bo Tuck called him a pussy that couldn't take a hit. Yet on the ice, no one can catch him. Or if they could, they wouldn't be able to anticipate his next move. And by the time they catch up, he would have scored another goal. Hence, the great one. Tuck, being the oldest of the brothers, always made sure to help me, being the baby, navigate through life and do what I needed to do. I love you too, my boy. Tuck, being the oldest of the brothers, always made sure to help me, the baby, navigate through life and do what I needed to get farther and make myself more capable to do better. Tuck was definitely one to make anyone and everyone laugh or do something extreme. I always made anything possible. I was about 7 years old and was still riding my bike with training wheels. And I tell you, they sure served its purpose. They were worn almost to the white rim they came with. The day he taught me to ride a bike, Bro Tuck had just pulled into the driveway of Dad's car. As I was coming down the road on my bike, I was tilted to the right, as it was where I found the most comfort to control the direction of the bike. Tuck was stepping out of the car and he yells to me, "You still got those on your bike? Come here." I pulled the bike into the driveway. He took the bike to the back of the car and he grabbed out the tools needed to remove the training wheels. After taking them off and fastening the bike to be back together to be rideable again, I can remember hearing my heart beat. My palms were sweaty. Maybe it was 'cause hot that summer afternoon. I don't know. I do know that I was nervous, but I trusted Bro Tuck. He was the oldest. He tells me, "Get on. I'll hold onto the bike. You hold onto the steering wheel with both hands. Keep pedaling. Look where you want to go." Hearing his words, I did what he had told me to do. He says, "I'm going to let go of the steering wheel. I still have the seat. Keep going." It was the confidence and encouragement I not only heard, but felt in his voice. It kept me going. I was terrified, but I kept doing as he did. Said, scared and unsure, I replied, "No." His belief in me, his encouraging presence and sarcastic chuckle resonates in my mind as he runs beside me and he says, "I'm going to let go of the seat now." "No." "I'm going to let go of the seat now." "No." This went back and forth between us for about 5 to 8 seconds, and it was not until I went about 30 or 40 feet with a wobbly bike that I had realized he had already let go, but I did it. And to this day I can hear his laugh when he saw what he had did. He gave me the confidence, and in his way he taught me how to ride a bike without training wheels. This is one of the plays that One Hour Line had at the time. Had a great time executing, and depending on who we were playing, it didn't fail too often. But as mentioned, this is where I kind of need to do some editing. Mentioned before, everything that we were, everywhere we lived, and even going to school was new. The 7 of us were the first generations of Wammas and Quatsino to attend public schools. The school system was not very welcoming for us, even though I was the 7th one. School made us tough, thick-skinned badasses that can take an ass kicking with smiles on our faces. Grade 1, I attended elementary school in Cole Harbor. Down at the end of the hall, first floor on the playground side, I was in the grade 1, 2, 3 class. My teacher, Mrs. Watsy. No, not kidding. We used to poke fun at her name. In Kwakwala, our traditional language, Watsy means dog. She was a very good sport about it, though, just played along and chuckled. I remember we were asked to draw a picture of the playground outside the class window, and probably, as we all have done, my picture had a blue stripe across the top and a quarter sun with the rays in the corner for the sky, and the ground was on the bottom. Her lesson to me on this day after seeing what I had drawn, she says, "Okay, come with me," as she grabbed my hand and led me to the window. Look at the park, and now look at the sky. As she was watching me look, giving me a moment, she points to my picture and she says, "Do you see the difference?" I can remember being so amazed by the fact that there was no blank space between the sky and the ground, probably not even knowing the impact she made on me that day. It has been life-altering with many life choices after this, especially in the planning stages of the sobriety walk. When you do not see the picture clearly, take a step back and change your perception. Things will become more clear and you will see the whole picture. What is missing is usually right in front of you. The racism in the school of those times came at us from all directions. The students and staff of being transitioned into this new normal, and as you can imagine, seeing some people's ethnicity was not only new but frightening, and that is where common misunderstandings started. Hearing stories about the recess and noon hour supervisors taking snacks from First Nation students and giving them to non-First Nation students, but for some reason they never bothered me. Even the bullies of the school also knew that I would not take shit from anyone. White students, I won't mention names, that were even 2 grades above me knew that I wouldn't back down. They stepped away from others that they were trying to bully when they knew I was around. They only backed down after I had to intimidate a few. But everyone knew I was that guy. They were only scared and needed to be kept at bay, as they all seemed to know what I was about. My words and energy whenever I confronted a bully was all that really took. I can literally count on one hand the number of times that I've been in a fight. My best friend while growing up in Quatsino was Chris. Surprisingly, someone we knew that caught the same bus to and from school did something that he shouldn't have. After school, I was informed of what had happened. Word spread like wildfire through Quatsino that I was looking for John to deal with the matter of him hurting Chris. I did everything that I could to avoid He did everything that he could to avoid me quite creatively, to be honest. We took the bus approximately 3 kilometers or so from Quatsino. He would He would watch and see if I had caught the bus, and if I did, he would ride his bike, and vice versa, just to avoid me. One night he must have been feeling quite brave, or maybe he was just tired of being on the run. He had gathered up a posse of friends, about 6 or 7 other mutual friends. I use the word mutual lightly, as we all grew up at this point together. As they were walking down the street, John had his ghetto blaster, but he had somebody else carrying it and was doing his best as he could to look intimidating, walking in the middle of these guys as he passed my house. He was swinging a baseball bat around and made a point to make sure that I had noticed him outside. I watched him get closer and closer as I was perched on the window ledge. It must have been fall, as it was only about 7:30 that particular Sunday night. It was already dark, and the church had started down the road, where most of our parents were at the time. Looking so scary with a bat and bodyguards, I had yelled to him sarcastically with a chuckle, letting him know that I was not intimidated. He was swinging his bat in the figure-8 motion, swinging from one hand to the other. I can still see that smirk on his face as he stood there, quiet, confident. Must have been thinking he had me beat. With all the security, he replies, "Come on out here then." To his surprise, I did not hesitate. With a smile on my face, I stood up, closed the window, and walked out the door. Very quickly made my way down the stairs and cross the road to where they were gathered to witness the shit that was about to go down. John was standing in the baseball stance, adjusting the grip on the bat, either out of being scared or overconfident. The bat over his left shoulder, as he was left-handed. We were both facing the same direction, as I was right-handed. Looking at him, smiling, looking at him and smiling, he tried to fake me out once or twice. I can only assume that he was seeing that I would back down. Deciding to take a swing at my leg that was closer to him, he contacted with my shin. I didn't even flinch, cringe, or react to the moment of impact. Even after hearing the impact hitting my leg, the sound of a bat ferociously hitting a post buried in the ground to stand erect. It hurt, yes, but the adrenaline and anger in the situation had come over me, and I was numb to that moment. A loud, hard thud that surprised everyone that was there, changing my stance around, and I looked directly in his eyes and calmly said, "You want to hit this one now?" Keen-eyed as I slowly lowered my head in a nod, letting him know he didn't faze my intentions of correcting a bully. The shocked look on his face as his jaw dropped. He did not know what to do. Frantically swinging the bat, still attempting to intimidate me. I am certain that it was Lance that had called out to me and tossed me a stick, thinner than a broom handle. I quickly whipped it across John's shin, and he dropped to the ground. That was the end of my first physical altercation in Victory. After this, John and I became very close friends. There was a group. I do not remember whether we were picked or we were a part of a group that fundraised to get there, but we all were fortunate to have attended the mile marker event at Expo 1986. To me, Expo was the explosion of technology and sci-fi, as Kit from the program Knight Rider was a bulletproof car, or Kit from the program The Knight Rider was a bulletproof, theft-proof, self-driving car that not only talks but anticipates what is coming and helps solve crimes. We as a group got to meet this famous car. That was the biggest highlight for me, other than getting lost with my crazy lifelong friend, Maggie Ann. There are actually pictures of the two of us together in Pampers. But we happened to get lost after the transit buses had stopped running in Vancouver. The years while attending Cole Harbour School, moving to the intermediate classes is where things got turned up fast. Our class all made a trip to Victoria on Victoria Day, and that was the introduction to my breakdancing days. We went to a movie we all decided on. It was a movie called Breakin' with Turbo and Ozone. This inspired a majority of the boys to take part in it. Breakdancing became so much a part of our lives that we were given permission to use an empty classroom to practice during inside days. I got myself so involved, I had a ghetto blaster with a detachable Walkman and would set out cardboard in front of the house in Quetzino. Uncle Stan talks of a specific night he watched me till 2 in the morning dancing in front of the house, determined to be better and better, not the best, but better and more confident for me. The teachers and I had, well, let's just say I was referred to as a teacher's pet from time to time, as I was able to be friends with the majority of my teachers, which for me made school a comfortable place. In those days of the late 70s on, it wasn't common for First Nation students and teachers to get along. Most of the students in Cole Harbour at that time were related or included as such. Names like Paul Tupper, Tom Russell, Jason Gill, Grandpa Greg, Pam Berry, so many more. So many firsts started to come out of those days of the male dominance, battles of physicality, and even wits among the peers. I can remember subtle challenges in sports, running long distances in cross country, track and field, even as far as riding a bike the fastest and who had the better bike. Jumping off of homemade ramps, crazy distances, and even over friends lined up head to toe on the back end of the ramp. Who can withstand the cold with ease? Who can eat the most? Do things that were dared or being called a pussy. I always had to be that guy that could. Time, for me, never really made me sleepy. I have always slept anywhere from 4 to 4.5 hours every night. Even would just go without sleep, but still function at the same level as anyone. Many times I would hear, "Do you ever sleep? Aren't you tired? I don't know how you do it." But the one that really stuck was, "He doesn't know how to sleep in." But all of the time, I never really knew how he did it. Throughout the years of sleepless nights, I looked for and found places of peace. Peace and quiet, peace of mind, just peace. One of the first places I had found was related to where many of us kids played growing up. Way up in the back roads behind the res in Quetzino, there was a cliff that had an old wire from the clear cut logging that had taken place not long prior. The vegetation was still at the beginning stages, fireweed, small alder, and other bushes. And being so high above the res, we were able to see all of the houses on both roads at that time. It was just a main road, and what to this day I still call the new road. And at the edge of that cliff, I walked up there in the middle of the night and sit there and just be in the moment. From the experience, I found that it took someone different to be able to do these things alone at night. One night, as I sat there at the far side from where the wire was, where we could see down to the res, I was in a meditative state, quiet and feeling relaxed. As I went to stand up from having my legs dangling over, twisting to the left, but as I rose to my feet about 10 feet behind me, there was a bear sitting there, doing exactly as I was. Of course, it stopped me for a few moments. I kept my eyes pointed to the ground in front of him, keeping that enormous figure in my peripheral vision. Working my way across, I was at the point that I had to cross in front of him to get back to the wire to climb down. When I was out of sight, I quickly climbed down and literally ran all the way home. So I had a bit of a drive and determination at an early age. I wanted to be the guy that could. From there, everything escalated. I found more. I needed to learn more, not only to say that I've done it, but become almost great at it. fastest on bikes, jumping crazy distances on homemade ramps, racing to, from Quatsi Lake, Cole Harbor, even at Port Hardy, bearing strength within myself to endure the cold, making water my element, riding, running, riding on bikes, even becoming one of the better swimmers in our immediate group. Almost anything I did, I was good at. It was what I had to do. As the years progressed, Tuck took it upon himself to take leadership role of the road runners, booking the gym 2 to 3 nights a week and gathering players that he had coached, making it clear to the entire team to understand their role on the floor. This was not the full extent to the responsibilities that he took on. When it came to scrimmage games, the hall would be booked, or if the games were in town, Tuck always made sure everyone would have a ride. But when it came into the tournaments, Tuck always went above and beyond for the team, even as far as paying for the whole entrance fee to enter the tournament. Not only that, but I also can remember him buying all the hockey balls. And if any one of the team members wasn't able to afford a stick or the proper runners to play in, yeah, he would pay for that too. With me personally, though, he first taught me how to play goalie, as he liked my flexibility. I was also able to drop down very quickly into the splits and had a very quick glove hand. I was pretty good at being in that, but it did not feel that it was where it would be most effective for the team. I decided to try it out on the floor, and at first I tried left wing, but found I was naturally rushing back to the defensive. It wasn't long that Brotuck decided that I should stay on defense. After I went on the floor, we were on to offense. I would stick to the opponent's blue line and do what I could to keep the ball onside, and always prepared for that one timer. I had a hard shot, but my aim was not the greatest. Yeah, this is where I got to do some more editing, but yeah, it's coming along nicely. Away.